Okay, so if you look at number 1, I'm going to do number 2, exactly how it's stated, all the highlighted ones. But if you look at number 1, if you're given an equation in what's considered standard form, or you're going to put it in standard form, right? And you're going to go to vertex form. Okay, what do you need in order to go to vertex form? There's 2 things you need. What are they? The vertex, good. And your what value? And your a value, good. So let's talk about what vertex form is. You guys need to know all this stuff. I'm not giving you any of these formulas. Your vertex form is f of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. What is your h and your k? That's your vertex. Your vertex is the x part and the y part, the h and the k. All right, so you have to have the vertex and the a value in order to write an equation in standard form, in vertex form. So if we take this first example, and you're going to write this, first of all, in standard form. How would you rewrite this so it was in standard form? Negative x squared minus 2x plus 8. This is in standard form. If we're going to go to vertex form, I can now identify what my a value is. What is your a value? Negative 1, good, the number in front of x squared. And then how do you find the vertex? You can't just look at this and find the vertex. So how would you find the vertex? What's that teeny little formula we use? Negative b over 2a. To find the x part of the vertex, it's negative b over 2a. So I'm going to say, okay, let's fill this in. Negative 2 over what? 2 times negative 1? Everybody with me? A negative 2 is 2 over 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So what is the x part of your vertex? Negative 1. Very good. Now, what do I do with that value in order to find out what my y value is? So you're going to say y equals, and I'm going to use this formula right here. I'm going to say negative 1 squared minus 2 times negative 1 plus 8. Where you guys will make your biggest mistakes is evaluating stuff like this with negative numbers or with fractions. That's where you guys are going to have your issue, and that is not a pre-calc issue. We've got to work on being able to know our order of operations and stuff like that. So when I am simplifying here, I square negative 1 first. What is negative 1 squared? 1, and then there's that negative that is out in front still, so it's negative 1. What's negative 2 and a negative 1? Plus 2, and then I have plus 8. So negative 1 plus 2. Negative 1 plus 2, guys, is 1, plus 8 is 9. So your vertex is at negative 1, 9. Now what do I do with this information in order to write your equation in vertex form? F of x equals what? What's your a value? Negative 1, hi. And then I have x what? Thanks. Minus the negative, so plus 1 squared. And then plus 9. There's your vertex form. So if you're given an equation in standard form where it goes x squared x and then your constant, and they ask you to write the equation in vertex form, you have to find the vertex first. All right, everybody with me? Okay, moving along. I'm going to go through this quickly. Again, I am going to post all of these answers. So if you don't get everything written down right now, it's not that big of a deal. You need to watch what I'm doing and listening to what I'm saying, and then you can rewatch the video. Yeah. It's a 1. Just trying to fix my parentheses. Got that wacky. Yes. And then standard form is just the x squared, the x. All right, so we're going to do all of the things here. We're gonna do all of the things for this problem. You do not have to graph this on your quiz tomorrow, but you do have to. There's going to be one question. You've got to do all the things. So first of all, what is the first thing I can write down for every parabola ever that we're going to talk about? Right now, our domain is negative infinity to positive infinity. Good. So think about this parabola. First of all, is it written in standard form? It is? No, we got to rewrite it. So it's f of x equals negative 3x squared minus x plus 2. Everybody agree now? Okay, so now we can tell a lot about our parabola. Is this a negative parabola or a positive one? It's a negative. Give yourself a little picture. It's going downwards. That means this point right here, your vertex, is the minimum value or the maximum value? It's the maximum. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say there's a maximum, and it's going to be at whatever y equals of my vertex. What else can I talk about? What else can I look at? Well, I know my range. I already know my range is. Is it going to be negative infinity to the y part of the vertex or from y to infinity? Negative infinity, good. To the y part of your vertex, whatever it is, we're going to figure it out. I know my axis of symmetry is going to be at what kind of a letter, x or y? X equals, goes with your vertex. And I can also answer what my y-intercept is. What is my y-intercept? 2. The directions at the top of the quiz say write all intercepts as ordered pairs. So how would you write your y-intercept is 2? 0, 2. All right, very good. So now let's find the most important piece of information, and then we can fill in everything else. How do you find the vertex? How do you find the vertex, guys? X equals negative b over 2a, all right? You're probably going to have fractions tomorrow. I'm telling you that, guys. Be prepared. There's no calculator. So I have negative, God bless you, negative 1, God bless you, over 2 times a, which is negative 3. Make sure you have your signs and everything right. So as I simplify, negative 1 is 1 over what? Negative 6. That is the x part of your vertex. Go ahead and plug it in here. Negative 1/6. Negative 1/6 is the x part of your vertex. Where else can I put negative 1/6? The axis of symmetry. Negative 1/6. Your axis of symmetry is x equals. Your max and min is y equals. So now what do I do with this negative 1/6? I have to plug it in to my polynomial. Is this going to be fantastic? No, but you guys will be fine. All right? We're going to do the same thing every time. We're going to distribute your exponent first. So I have negative 3 out in front. If I distribute the exponent here and here, what is negative 1 squared? 1. And then what's 6 squared? 36. Perfect. Then I have minus 1/6 plus 2. I'm going to go ahead and put the 2 over 1 and remind myself, ooh, I'm going to have to get a common denominator. Yeah?
Isn't the 1/6, wouldn't that be a positive because it's a negative?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Right here. So this should be negative like this. It should be like that, right? So this will become plus. Thank you. All right, now before, if you guys want to go ahead and multiply, that's fine. But before you do, I would go ahead and simplify a little bit. Can you simplify anything between negative 3 and 36? Yes. How many times does negative 3 go into 36? Anybody? 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 6 how many times? 2. So this is going to be 1 over 12, and it's going to be negative because it's negative 3. If you multiply it over, it would be negative 3 over 36, and then you would simplify. Can I change 1/6 to 12ths? How would I do that? I'd multiply the bottom by 2. So what you do to the bottom, you do where? To the top. And then can I change positive 2 to 12? So what would I have to multiply by? By 12. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So this becomes 24. That right there, guys, is going to be the hardest thing that you do on your quiz. And if you don't do that correctly, then everything else, think about it, in the problem is wrong. So just make sure you're paying attention. Don't let negative signs get lost or anything. What is negative 1 plus 2? 1 plus 24. 25. So your y value of your vertex is at 25 over 12. Leave it. Don't change that to a mixed number. Some of you do that and then do your math wrong. Just leave it. So where can I put 25 over 12? 25 over 12 is the y part of my vertex. It's also the beginning of my range. And where else is it? Your max and min, 25 over 12. So we have answered almost everything by just finding the vertex. Can we now do our vertex form? Yes, what do you need for vertex form? F of x equals your A, what's your A term? Negative 3 times x minus the h part of your vertex. So minus the negative is going to give me plus 1/6 squared. And then plus k, so plus 25 over 12. Everything is answered, guys, by looking at your parabola, getting a mental picture of what it looks like, and finding the vertex. So if you mess up the vertex, it's going to really mess up this problem. So pay attention to what you're doing. Lastly, how do we find x-intercepts? You factor, okay? Now, notice this is negative. Let me move up a little bit. Negative 3x squared minus x plus 2. Did I write that correctly? Okay. Guys, if you lead with a negative, what should you do? Let's factor it out. Let's get rid of that negative. So I'm going to take out the negative 1, and that leaves me with 3x squared plus x minus 2 equals 0. Everybody with me? Now we're going to factor 3 times negative 2. What is 3 times negative 2? Negative 6. What are the factors of negative 6 that multiply to give me a negative 6, but add to give me a 1? So plus 3 minus 2. And since my a term is not 1, what do I do with it? I'm going to divide both factors here. So I have my negative 1 is still out in front, didn't go anywhere. I have x plus 1, and I have 3x minus 2, correct? Everybody with me? Now, how many answers should I have here?
3.
I should have 2, right? The highest exponent is 2. Diego, I understand why you said 3, and I'm glad that you did. You're going to set each piece equal to 0, correct? So let's go ahead and do that. If I say negative 1 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, and 3x minus 2 equals 0. Does negative 1 ever equal 0? No. If you factor out just a number, that is not going to be an intercept. But you will if you have an x attached to it. So just be careful with that. So then here, this becomes x equals negative 1. And this becomes x equals 2/3, right? But we write our intercepts how? As ordered pairs, as points. So it's negative 1, what? Negative 1 comma 0, good. And what was the other one? 2/3 comma 0, perfect. So that's a lot of information in that problem. But yes, the main thing is though, guys, you've got to find what? The vertex, okay? All right, moving along here. I'm not going to do this whole problem out because it's very basic. It's the same thing. But it says, does this have a minimum or maximum value? How can you tell right away if this has a minimum or maximum? Is this positive or negative, guys? It's positive. So it has what kind of a value? It has a minimum. It's going to be the minimum at the y part of the vertex, right? And then how do we find the vertex? Negative b over 2a and plug back in. All right, so just make sure you guys understand how to find. If you're in standard form, how do you find the vertex? If you have to write it in standard form, you go backwards, yeah.
On the quiz, do you want us to give you like the minimum or maximum value, or do we just put like minimum or maximum?
You need to do like this. You need to say if it's minimum or maximum, and then tell me where it is. Yeah. Good question. Let's move along. I want to make sure we hit everything. You will have a question. I'm going to do both of these so you guys understand exactly what I'm asking you to do. There will be lines that look like this. There will be room to do your work. If you just want to do your work and draw arrows and stuff like I'm about to do, perfectly fine. But let's look and discover, figure out, first of all, is this written in standard form? No. So rewrite it. This is 2x cubed plus 3x. Correct? All right, so if we're talking about n behaviors, what is the highest exponent you see? 3. What kind of a number is 3? It's odd. So we think odd and opposite. Is it positive or negative? Positive, right? Positive, okay. So it's going to be going upwards like that. So my n behaviors, what's happening on the left-hand side? What's happening on the right-hand side? It's falling left and rising right. You literally write falling left, rising right. Now, if you don't write stuff on the line, that's totally fine. I don't care. That is just an indication of what I'm looking for. But I need you at least to circle your answer. Don't have me searching all over trying to figure out what you're trying to do. Now, zeros. How do you find the zeros? You factor. So when we factor, we set equal to 0 and solve. So what can I take out of 2x cubed and 3x? You can take out an x, and I'm left with what? 2x squared plus 3 equals 0. Can I factor 2x squared plus 3 anymore? No, you can't. You can solve it, but you can't factor it anymore. So if I do this, I'm going to say x equals 0, and I have 2x squared plus 3 equals 0. So when I solve this, what happens? I subtract 3 from both sides, correct? Yes? So 2x squared equals negative 3. Divide by 2. So x squared equals negative 3 over 2. And then I do what? Take the square root. When I take the square root, what goes in front of my answer? What's the problem here? It's not going to be real, right? This is what? Imaginary. If you guys get an imaginary, don't freak out. Don't freak out. You could just say, here, I have plus minus. You could say the square root of 3 over 2 and put an I in front of it, whatever. But don't freak out if you get an imaginary. That's okay. I'm not going to have you graph an imaginary, so don't worry about that. So in this case, your zeros would be, you guys could tell me these are your zeros. That by saying x equals, you're telling me what your zeros are. So now let's answer multiplicity. How many times do you guys see 0? One time. Okay. How many times do you see plus or minus square root of 3i? The square root. You see each of them one time, right? You have one of each. So what happens when you have an even number of multiplicity? What's it going to do at the x-axis? I'm sorry, you're right. I said even, but I meant odd. When you have an odd number of multiplicity, I was like, that's right, but that's not what this is. If you have an odd number of multiplicity, you have the same answer 1 time, 3 times, 5 times. It's going to go through the x-axis. If you have an even number, what's it going to do? Touch and turn. All right, you will not have to graph one that has imaginary solutions. So if you get an imaginary solution on this question, check your work. I'm telling you that. Don't tell me, oh, I think you messed up. No, you guys messed up, so pay attention. Let's look at the next one. We're going to do this one together. We're going to graph this one. Are we in standard form?
Yes.
Yes. What is the highest exponent you see? 4. What kind of number is 4? Even. I think even n. Same. What kind? Positive. What's the end behavior for this? Rising left and? Perfect. It's rising on both sides. So we're rising left, rising right. The reason we need to know that is because we're going to sketch the graph and you know both sides should be going up. So if we're going to find the zeros, guys, how do we find zeros? First of all, how many should we have? We should have 4. So what do we do first? Let's not group it yet. What do you see and what do they all have in common? They all have an x, right? So take that out. So x cubed minus 6x squared minus 2x plus 12 equals 0. Now can we group? Yes or no? Okay, so you still have that x out in front. It did not go anywhere. What can you take out of x cubed and x squared? X squared, and you're left with x minus 6. Yes? Okay, what can we take out of negative 2x and a positive 12? Negative 2, and you're left with x minus 6. Okay, great. So I still have my x out in front. In our red that we just grouped, what is our new GCF? What's our new GCF? What do they both have in common? X minus 6. We write it one time out in front. And then what happens to my leftovers? X squared minus 2 gets their own parenthesis. Now, can I factor x squared minus 2 anymore? No, I cannot. I cannot factor x squared minus 2 anymore. So your answers here would be x equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0, and x squared minus 2 equals 0. So if I solve this, x equals 0, x equals 6. What's x equal here? plus or minus the square root of 2. Guys, I'm not asking you to tell me the exact value of plus minus square root of 2. I'm not even asking you to give it to me on a graph in its exact position. I'll show you what I want you to do in a second. It's not a big deal. But let's talk about our answers. At the beginning, how many did we say we should have? 4. How many do we have?
4.
I have 4. 0, 6, positive square root of 2, negative square root of 2. So now, there's my 0. So let's talk about multiplicity. How many times do you have x equals 0? 1 time. How many x equals 6s? 1 time. How many plus or minus 2s? 1 time. So what happens at the x-axis on all of these? It's going to cross through, however you want to say it. If you just write the word through, that's totally fine with me. If it was an even number of times that you had it, it would be touch and turn. Now, I am fine with you guys answering these questions just like that. As long as you go, hi, here's my answers. And I know which 0 you're talking about, whatever the multiplicity is. So now if you have to sketch this, very simple. First of all, let's talk about our intercepts. Where am I going to put points on the x-axis? At 0. So look, I'm going to put a 0. I need one at positive 6. You guys agree with me? Positive 6 is going to be over there. Yes? Do you guys agree with me that the square root of 2 is somewhere in between 0 and 6? And do you agree with me that the negative square root of 2 is to the left of 0? I'm totally fine with that. You don't have to put it exactly. It's going to have a grid on your quiz just to keep it nice and neat. But as long as in respects to 0, the numbers, the positive ones are on the right, the negative ones are on the left, they go in numerical order, that's fine. So now think about what your graph looks like. Both ends of the arrows are going in which direction? Both up. So draw up arrows. What happens at each intercept? It goes through. So do that, guys. Draw a picture. I don't care how far down you go. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to go through, then through, then through, then through. That's it. That's all I need from you guys. I need the direction of the arrows to be correct. I need your intercepts to be correct. And then what happens at the x-axis to be correct. If it touches and turns, it doesn't go through. It just touches and bounces and goes the opposite direction to its next destination. I'll do another graph like that in a second. All right, let's scoot along. You guys. Long division. There is a question that says solve using long division. So what do you have to solve using? Long division. You guys have to use long division. So let's do one real quick. 3x minus 4. And then I have 12x cubed minus 10x squared minus 17x plus 12. First term into first term. So 3x times what gives me 12x cubed? What is it? 4x squared. So get your subtraction ready before you multiply. Now we're going to say 4x squared times 3x is 12x cubed. 4x squared and negative 4 is negative 16x squared. Agreed? So now, before I go ahead and subtract, I have to distribute. So what's negative 10 and a positive 16? 6x squared. My cubes cancel out. I bring down my negative 17x. And we do it all over again. First term into first term. 3x times what gives me 6x squared. So plus 2x. So 2 times 3 is going to give me 6x squared. Good. 2 times negative is going to give me what? What is it? Negative 8x. Good. Before you subtract, you're going to distribute. What's negative 17 and positive 8? Negative 9x. And then bring down the 12. First term into first term. 3x times what gives me negative 9x? Negative 3. Good. So get this set up. That sounded good, guys. So negative 3 times 3 is negative 9x. Negative 3 and negative 4 is what? Plus 12. So before I subtract, I have to distribute. What happens with 12 and negative 12? Cancel. What happens with negative 9 and positive 9? Cancel. So your answer is just this. That's all I need. If you had a remainder, and this problem, if I had a remainder, what would I put it over?
3x minus 4.
3x minus 4. I can assure you that all 6 versions of the quiz, everything divides in pretty, and you might have a remainder. You may not, but you might. But there is nothing inside the problem that would create a fraction or where the outside number doesn't go in evenly. So if you come up with a problem like that, then you just made a mistake. Okay?
Ms. Miller,
Yep.
can you explain the plus or minus right next to the parentheses?
When you go to, at this step, you have to subtract. But when you subtract a polynomial, before you can subtract, you have to distribute the negative sign. So this step, you have to change this sign and then change everything behind it.
So that could either be like a plus or minus?
No, it always starts off as a minus, and then you always have to change it to a plus before you go, because you're distributing. It's like this. Like, say you had 4x plus 3 minus 7x minus 2, right? Before you can combine those, what do you have to do with that negative sign? You have to distribute it. So you're changing this, and then you're changing all the signs behind it. We're doing the exact same thing when we add left and, or when we subtract left and right. You're just doing it vertically.
Okay.
All right, let's look at the next one. Divide using synthetic division. Determine if something is a factor or not. If they tell you what to use, guys, what am I plugging in? I'm going to use -2 because I'm setting this equal to 0. So I write out my coefficients. 1, -3, -7, 1, -1, 18. I'm going to tell you right now, make sure you check to make sure there's no gaps when you do anything with synthetic division. Always check. So now we multiply to the corner and we add down. What's 1 times -2? -2. What's -3 and -2? Good. -5 and -2 is 10. -7 and 10 is 3. 3 times -2 is -2. Just kidding. Yes, she came from a college meeting. Thank you. 3 times -2 is -6. 1 and -6 is -5. -5 and -2 is 10. 1 and 10 is what? -1 and 10 is 9 times -2 is -18. My remainder is 0. What is the answer to this question? Yes, it's a factor. Why is this a factor? Because the remainder is 0. Right? Good. Good. Use the what here? Remainder theorem. What does that mean? What's the only thing I care about? The remainder. I'm going to tell you what number to use for synthetic division. You synthetically divide. That's it. So you write out your coefficients. 4, -8, -4, 23. Is everything accounted for? I don't have any gaps or anything? Okay. Make sure you check for that tomorrow. I'm telling you that again. Bringing down the 4. What's 4 times -3? -12. What's -8 and -12? -20. -20 and then -3 is +60. What's -4 and 60? 56. Okay, now guys, you're going to have to multiply 56 times -3. Look, over here. 56 times 3. 18. Carry the 1. 15. It's... I'll post this. -168, right? And then when you combine, what's -168 and 23? What is it? -145. So how would we answer this question? F of -3, because that's what they told me, equals -145. You guys might have a number that's kind of big. That's okay. Put it up in the corner. Show your work. Use your brain. You guys can handle it. All right? About what? Not right now. Yep. We got time. Yes, sir. All right. Use synthetic division to find the roots of the polynomial. Given. If you have a question like this, what are they asking you? To use what? They're telling you, hey, this is a root. So what are they telling you to use for synthetic division? What number? -3. Before you do synthetic division, what's the problem here, guys? What is it? Look at 14. What's the problem? It's not in standard form. Guys, some of you will write out 1, -4, 12, 3. That's not correct. Write everything in standard form first. So x cubed minus 3x squared, right? Minus 4x minus 12. Now the question is saying,
It's plus 3x squared.
thank you. The question is saying, given that this is a root, so what should your answer be for your remainder when you do this problem? 0. So you then take your resulting polynomial and you figure out what the rest of them are. So I'm going to use -3, and then I'm going to plug in all my coefficients. 1, 3, -4, and -12. Okay. 1 times -3 is -3. 3 and -3 is what? 0. 0 times -3 is 0. -4 and 0 is -4. -4 and -3 is 12. And then this is 0. So you've done the first step. You've proven, okay, hey, this works. Guys, don't be fooled with something like this. If you started off with x cubed, what's the highest exponent, or what's the next exponent, I should say?
X squared.
X squared. So this is my x squared. This is my constant. Trying to go fast. This is my x. This is my constant. This is my remainder. How do I write that? X squared minus 4 equals what? 0. Can you factor that? Yes. Can you also just solve it from here? Yes. Whichever way you want to do it. But this would be x minus 2, x plus 2. So what are the other two zeros? X equals positive 2 and x equals negative 2. It's just using synthetic division. They're going to give you the root. Just make sure, guys, at this step, make sure everything is on the left side of the equal sign. Make sure it's in standard form. Don't get tripped up by something silly. All right, 2 more. You absolutely, everybody in here will have one of these. Find all the roots. Use the rational zeros test. What is the rational zeros test? P over Q. Everyone will have one of these. How do I do P over Q? What do I look at? The last number, the constant. I should have 4 answers. So I have plus minus 1, 2, and 4. Start with 1. If 1 doesn't work, go to -1. If negative doesn't work, go to 2. You should not have to do synthetic division more than, I'd say, 2 or 3 times to find the first answer. So I write out my coefficients. It's 1, 2, -3, -8, -4. Yeah? 1 times 1 is 1. 2 plus 1 is 3 times 1 is 3. -3 and 3 is 0 times 1 is this going to work? No, so just go to the next one. Don't waste any time. So 1, 2, -3, -8, -4. 1 times -1 is -1. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 times -1, -1. What's -3 and -1? -4. What's -4 times -1? +4. What's -8 and 4? -4. What's -4 times -1? +4. What's -4 and +4? 0. So what did you guys just prove to me? One of your zeros is x equals -1. Write that down. Don't just leave it with a check mark. Write it down. So what do we have left over here? X what? Cubed, squared, x, constant, remainder. So I have x cubed plus x squared plus x minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. Can we factor this?
No.
Let's try grouping. Let's see if it works. Always try. Just in case. What can I take out of x cubed and x squared? Okay, take out x squared. I'm left with x plus 1. What can I take out of -4x and -4? -4, I'm left with x plus 1. All right, what's my new GCF that I'm going to write out front one time? X plus 1. What happens with my leftovers? They get their own parenthesis. Again, you can solve from this point if you want to, or you could go ahead and factor more. I'm going to just factor more, so I have x plus 1. This is going to be x plus 2, x minus 2, right? You guys agree? So my other zeros are x equals negative 1, x equals 2, x equals negative 2. Do you have 4 answers? Yeah.
So, say we couldn't factor that next to you do.
If you get here and you can't factor, you won't have that.
Yeah, we won't.
No. If you get to one that you can't factor, it would be a quadratic, and then you'd have to just use the quadratic formula. But you won't get an x cubed that you can't factor. Now, I'm not asking you guys to graph this, but I want to show you what multiplicity would look like. Do you guys see how you have negative 1 2 times? So let's think about if you had to graph this. Let's look at what this would look like. First of all, where are your intercepts? There's negative 1. There's one at negative 2, right? And positive 2. That's just how I would need to see it. No big deal. What is the end behavior of this graph? X to the 4th. Same, both going which direction? Both positive, right? So I'm just going to do 2 little up arrows up here. One up, well, that's horrible color choice. Up and up. So what happens at 2 and negative 2? It goes through, good. But what happens at negative 1? It bounces, it touches and turns. Let me show you what that would look like. It goes through negative 2 and 2, but it bounces at negative 1. So watch. Through 2, it goes up to negative 1 and bounces off. That wasn't a good bounce. Comes through negative 2, it goes up to negative 1, bounces off, and then comes back down, and it's going to go through it too. Do you see the difference between the going through and the touching and turning? All right, I am going to grade your graph like this. Don't give me a graph that looks like this. And then just be like, that's right. Don't put some thought into it. You have to have your intercepts. You have to have the correct action at the x-axis. Yes, sir? Because there's the same number 2 times. If you have an even number of multiplicity, meaning you have the same answer 2 times or 4 times or 6 times, it's going to bounce instead of go through. Good question. All right, one more. I just made this up. Given the vertex and a point on a parabola. Yeah. Yeah. There's only one you have to graph. Given the vertex and the points on the parabola, write in vertex form. All right, so think about what they give you. They give you the vertex, which is your h and your k. They give you an x value and a y value, which is the point that's on the parabola, correct? You guys agree with me? All right, so what do we have to find first before you can write in vertex form? Got to find the a. You have your vertex. Go ahead and write it out. Say, okay, my vertex is negative 3, 7. I'm going to write my h and my k on top of it so I don't forget. I got to find a. So all we're going to do is use our vertex form. F of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And we're going to plug in all the information they gave us. So instead of y, what's the y value that they gave me in the ordered pair? 8 equals a times, what's the x value they gave me? Negative 2, all right, minus the h. So minus a negative gives me plus 3, agreed? Squared, and then I have plus 7. So 8 equals a, oh, this worked out. I just pulled these numbers out of nowhere. What's negative 2 plus 3? 1, so 1 squared. That's kind of silly, but whatever. All right, so I have 8 equals 1 squared is just 1, so a plus 7. Now what? Minus 7 from both sides. So a equals what? 1. So if I was going to write this in vertex form, first of all, I could never again make it work out where all of this just came out to be so pretty and just little 1, but it's fine. So 1, all right, your a is 1. So your vertex form would be f of x equals, a is 1. So I'm just going to put it just so you guys can see. But x minus the h part of my vertex, so minus a negative 3 is going to give me plus 3 squared, and then plus 7. I might change that for the rest of the classes just to make it not 1. Yeah, thanks for waiting. All right, you guys all right? I know I went quickly. I understand that. I totally understand that. I will post the answers to this review in just a little bit so you guys can go over it. You can rewatch this, but use the other problems as extra practice. But work through it. Questions you have, come see me in the morning if you have them.